Jake Morrison wiped the grease from his hands and looked at the old clock on the wall. It was almost 6 in the evening. Another long day at his father's auto shop was finally over. The 19-year-old stretched his sore back and decided he needed some fresh air. "Dad, I'm going for a walk up the mountain," Jake called out to his father, who was still working under the hood of an old truck. "Be careful, son. Don't stay out too late," his father replied without looking up. Jake grabbed his backpack and headed out into the cool Colorado evening. The small mining town where he lived was quiet as usual. Most people were inside eating dinner or watching television. Jake loved these evening walks. The mountains around his town were beautiful, especially when the sun was setting. He followed a trail he knew well. It led up into the hills where few people ever went. Jake had been hiking these paths since he was a boy. He knew every rock and tree along the way. The exercise helped him think and forget about the problems at the shop. As Jake climbed higher, he heard a strange sound. It was like metal hitting rocks, but much louder. The sound came from somewhere ahead of him, beyond a group of tall pine trees. Jake stopped walking and listened carefully. Everything was quiet now. Curious, Jake left the trail and pushed through the trees. On the other side, he found something that made him freeze in shock. There was a large crater in the ground, and in the middle of it lay something that looked like a silver egg. But this egg was as big as a small car, and it was definitely not natural. Steam rose from the strange object. Parts of it glowed with a soft blue light. Jake had never seen anything like it. He knew he should probably run away and call someone, but something made him move closer. As he got near the object, Jake saw that it was cracked open on one side. Through the crack, he could see inside. What he saw made his heart race. There was a person inside, but this person was not human. The being inside had blue skin that seemed to shine in the dim light. Long silver hair covered most of her face, but Jake could see that she was definitely female and appeared to be about his age. She was wearing strange clothes that looked like they were made from metal fabric. Most importantly, she was not moving. Jake looked around quickly. No one else was in sight. He was completely alone with this incredible discovery. His hands shook as he reached toward the crack in the object. He had to know if the blue girl was alive. When Jake touched her neck, he felt a pulse. It was weak, but it was there. The girl was alive, but she was clearly hurt badly. Her breathing was very shallow, and her blue skin felt cold. Jake made a decision that would change his life forever. Instead of running to get help, he carefully pulled the girl from the crashed object. She was light, much lighter than a human. Her size should be. Jake lifted her in his arms and started walking toward an old hunting cabin he knew about. The cabin had been abandoned for years, but it still had a roof and walls. More importantly, it was hidden deep in the woods where no one would find them. Jake was not sure why, but he knew he could not let anyone else discover this girl. Something told him that if the government or military found her, bad things would happen. It took Jake almost an hour to carry the girl to the cabin. By the time he got there, it was completely dark. Jake had a small flashlight in his backpack, and he used it to look around the old cabin. There was an old bed with a mattress that was still usable. Jake gently placed the girl on the bed and covered her with his jacket. Now that he could see her better, Jake realized how beautiful she was. Even with her strange blue skin and silver hair, her face was perfect. She looked peaceful, like she was just sleeping. But Jake was worried. He did not know anything about her biology. What if she needed special food or medicine? Jake sat in a chair next to the bed and watched the girl breathe. Every few minutes, he checked her pulse. It seemed to be getting stronger, which gave him hope. As the hours passed, Jake began to plan. He would need to bring food and water. He would need blankets and maybe some medical supplies from the shop. Around midnight, the girl made a small sound. Jake leaned forward and saw her eyes open. They were the most beautiful eyes he had ever seen. They were purple like jewels, and they seemed to glow softly in the darkness. The girl looked at Jake with confusion and fear. She tried to sit up quickly, but Jake gently put his hand on her shoulder. "It's okay," Jake said softly. You're safe. I found you hurt and I brought you here to help you." The girl said something in a language Jake had never heard. It sounded like music with rising and falling tones that were beautiful but completely foreign. She looked around the cabin and then back at Jake. Her purple eyes studied his face carefully. Jake pointed to himself and said, "Jake, my name is Jake." Then he pointed to her and raised his eyebrows as a question. The girl seemed to understand. She pointed to herself and said something that sounded like Lyra. She repeated it several times, and Jake nodded. "Lyra," Jake said, and the girl smiled for the first time. Her smile was amazing, and it made Jake feel warm inside. Over the next few hours, Jake and Lyra tried to communicate using gestures and simple words. Jake brought her water from a stream near the cabin, and she drank it gratefully. When Jake offered her some food from his backpack, she ate it slowly and carefully as if she was not sure it was safe. By morning, Jake knew his life had changed completely. He had found someone from another world, and somehow he had decided to protect her. He did not know what dangers she was running from, but he knew he would keep her safe. As the sun rose through the cabin windows, Lyra looked at Jake with her beautiful purple eyes and said one word in English, "Thank you." 10 years had passed since that strange night in the mountains. Jake Morrison was now 29 years old and lived in a nice apartment in Denver. He had become a successful engineer who designed clean energy systems for big companies. His life was good, and most days he felt happy about how things had turned out. Jake looked at himself in the bathroom mirror as he got ready for work. He still wore the small crystal pendant that Lyra had given him all those years ago. It hung on a thin chain around his neck, and he never took it off. Sometimes people asked him about it, but he always said it was just a family gift. The crystal was beautiful. It was clear like glass, but it had tiny blue lights that seemed to move inside it. Jake had never seen anything like it in any store or museum. It was proof that his time with Lyra had really happened, even though sometimes it felt like a dream. After getting dressed, Jake walked to the kitchen where Lisa Parker was making breakfast. Lisa was his girlfriend of 3 years, and they were planning to get married next month. She was a teacher at a local elementary school and had the kindest heart of anyone Jake knew. "Good morning, sleepyhead," Lisa said with a smile. She was wearing her favorite blue dress, the one that made her brown eyes look especially pretty. "I made your favorite eggs and toast." "Thanks, you're amazing," Jake said, kissing her cheek. He sat down at the small table and ate his breakfast, while Lisa got ready for work. Jake loved his life with Lisa. She was smart, funny, and she made him feel complete. Sometimes he felt guilty that he had never told her about Lyra. It was the only secret he kept from her. He wanted to tell her, but who would believe such a crazy story? At work, Jake spent his day working on plans for a new fusion power plant. His company was building clean energy systems all over the world. Jake was proud that his work was helping to fight climate change and make the world a better place. Sometimes Jake wondered if his time with Lyra had influenced his interest in advanced technology. During those 3 months 10 years ago, Lyra had shown him small pieces of alien technology that worked in ways he could not understand. Maybe seeing those devices had inspired him to become an engineer. Jake remembered how quickly Lyra had learned to speak English. By the end of her first week in the cabin, she could have simple conversations. She told him that her people were refugees running from a powerful empire that wanted to destroy them. She said her ship had been damaged in a fight, and that was why she crashed on Earth. For 3 months, Jake had taken care of Lyra. Every day after work, he hiked to the cabin with food, water, and supplies. He taught her about human culture, and she taught him small things about her people. She showed him how her technology worked by using her thoughts to control it. She could make small devices glow or move just by concentrating on them. The hardest part was keeping Lyra secret. Sometimes search teams came through the mountains looking for something. Jake was always scared they would find the cabin, but Lyra had some kind of device that made it hard for scanners to detect her, so they were never discovered. When Lyra's rescue ship finally came, Jake felt happy and sad at the same time. He was glad she would be safe, but he knew he would miss her terribly. Before she left, Lyra gave him the crystal pendant and promised she would never forget his kindness. "This will let me find you again someday," she had said with tears in her purple eyes. "You saved my life, Jake Morrison. I will remember this always." That was the last time Jake saw her. Her ship disappeared into the night sky, and Jake returned to his normal life. But he was never quite the same. He had seen that humans were not alone in the universe, and that knowledge changed everything. Now, 10 years later, Jake tried not to think about Lyra too much. He had Lisa, his career, and a good life on Earth. But sometimes at night he would look up at the stars and wonder what had happened to the blue girl he had saved. The world had changed a lot in 10 years. Technology was advancing faster than ever before. Scientists had made breakthrough discoveries in energy, medicine, and space travel. Humans had built a permanent base on the moon and were planning missions to Mars. Jake often wondered if other people had encountered aliens like he had. Maybe first contact was happening slowly, in small ways that the general public did not know about. Maybe the government knew about aliens but was keeping it secret. That evening, Jake and Lisa were having dinner at their favorite restaurant. They were talking about their wedding plans when Lisa's phone buzzed with a news alert. "That's strange," Lisa said, reading her phone. "The news says there are unusual energy readings in the atmosphere. Some scientists think it might be solar activity, but others say it's something else." Jake felt his crystal pendant grow warm against his chest. This was the first time it had done that since Lyra left. He tried to stay calm, but his heart started beating faster. "Probably just a solar storm," Jake said, trying to sound casual. "Those happen sometimes." But Jake knew it was not a solar storm. Deep down, he had a feeling that something big was about to happen. The warmth from the crystal was getting stronger, and it felt like Lyra was trying to tell him something. Over the next few days, more strange reports came in. Pilots reported seeing unusual lights in the sky. Radio telescopes detected signals from space that did not match any known sources. Government agencies started acting nervous, but they said everything was normal. Jake watched the news carefully, but he did not tell Lisa about his growing suspicions. The crystal pendant was now warm all the time, and sometimes Jake thought he could hear a faint musical sound coming from it. On Friday evening, Jake was working late at his office when every television and radio in the building suddenly switched to an emergency broadcast. Jake stopped working and listened carefully. "This is an emergency announcement from the United States government," said a serious voice. "Large unidentified objects have been detected approaching Earth. All citizens are asked to remain calm and stay in their homes. More information will be provided as it becomes available." Jake's hands shook as he called Lisa to make sure she was safe. After talking to her, he drove home quickly through streets filled with confused and scared people. When he got to his apartment, he found Lisa watching the news with wide eyes. "Jake, look at this," she said, pointing at the television screen. The news was showing video from space telescopes. In the images, Jake could see massive ships approaching Earth. They were beautiful and elegant, with designs unlike anything humans had ever built. The largest ship was especially impressive, with graceful curves and glowing blue symbols on its hull. Jake stared at the screen and felt the crystal pendant burning against his chest. Somehow, he knew that after 10 years, Lyra was coming back. But she was not the frightened refugee he had saved in the mountains. She was something much more powerful now. As Jake watched the alien fleet approach Earth, he realized that his quiet life was about to end. Everything was about to change, and he was not sure if he was ready for what was coming. The alien ships hung in the sky above Earth like giant silver clouds. For 3 days, the world held its breath and waited. Military forces gathered, but the ships made no aggressive moves. They simply waited in orbit, silent and mysterious. Jake could not sleep or eat properly. The crystal pendant around his neck was now so warm it almost burned his skin. Sometimes he heard faint musical sounds coming from it, like the language Lyra used to speak. Lisa was worried about him, but Jake could not explain what was happening. On the 4th day, everything changed. Every television, radio, and computer screen on Earth suddenly displayed the same message. The signal came from the lead alien ship and it was broadcast in perfect English. "People of Earth," said a calm, musical voice. "I am Empress Lyra Zephys of the Zephyrian Empire. We come in peace. We wish to speak with one of your people. We request a meeting with Jake Morrison of Colorado, United States. He will know why we have come." Jake stared at the television screen in shock. All around the world, billions of people heard his name spoken by an alien empress. Within minutes, his phone started ringing. Government agents would be coming for him soon. Lisa grabbed Jake's arm and looked at him with wide eyes. "Jake, how does an alien empress know your name? What is going on?" Before Jake could answer, there was a loud knock on their apartment door. Jake opened it to find 6 men in black suits. They showed him government identification and asked him to come with them immediately. "Sir, we need you to accompany us for a matter of national security," said the lead agent. "The president wants to speak with you." Jake looked back at Lisa. She was scared and confused, but she nodded at him. "Go," she said. "I'll be waiting for you." The government agents took Jake to a secret military base outside Denver. There, he met with generals, scientists, and intelligence officers. They asked him hundreds of questions, but Jake told them he had no idea why the aliens wanted to see him. Jake was not ready to tell the truth yet. He needed to see Lyra first and understand what was happening. The crystal pendant told him she was close and that she meant no harm. 2 days later, Jake was flown to a secure location in Nevada where the first contact would take place. The area was surrounded by military forces, but the alien ships had promised to land only one small vessel for the meeting. Jake stood in the middle of a large cleared area, wearing a simple black suit that the government had given him. Behind him were dozens of officials, scientists, and military officers. News cameras from around the world were recording everything. A beautiful silver ship descended from the largest alien vessel in orbit. It was about the size of a house and moved, without making any sound. The ship landed gently on the ground about 50 feet from where Jake was standing. A door opened in the side of the ship, and Jake felt his heart stop. The person who stepped out was definitely Lyra, but she was not the frightened refugee he remembered. She was now a powerful ruler, and it showed in everything about her. Lyra wore armor that looked like it was made from liquid silver. It covered her from neck to toe but moved like soft fabric. On her head was a crown of blue crystal that glowed with inner light. Her silver hair was longer now and flowed down her back like water. But her face was the same. She still had the same beautiful purple eyes and the same gentle smile. When she saw Jake, her formal expression melted away, and she looked just like the young girl he had saved 10 years ago. Lyra walked toward Jake slowly, and the crowd behind him was completely silent. When she was close enough to touch him, she stopped and spoke in a voice that carried across the entire area. "Jake Morrison," she said, and her voice was full of emotion. 10 years ago, you saved the life of a dying refugee. You asked for nothing in return. You risked your safety to protect someone you had never met. Today, that refugee has returned as Empress of the Zephyrian Empire to repay her debt." Jake felt tears in his eyes. "Lyra," he said quietly, "you kept your promise. You found me." Lyra smiled and reached up to touch the crystal pendant hanging around Jake's neck. When her fingers touched it, the crystal blazed with blue light that everyone could see. "I told you this would let me find you again," she said. "I have carried its pair with me across hundreds of worlds. Not a day has passed that I did not think of your kindness." Behind Jake, he could hear people whispering in amazement. The president stepped forward and cleared his throat. "Your Majesty," the president said carefully, "we welcome you to Earth. May we ask why you have come?" Lyra turned to address the president and the other officials, but she stayed close to Jake. "I have come to offer Earth membership in the Zephyrian Confederation," she said. "Our empire spans 300 worlds and 12 star systems. We offer trade, technology, and protection to all member worlds." "Protection from what?" asked a general. Lyra's expression became serious. "The Void Collective is expanding toward this sector of space. They are machines that consume organic life to fuel their growth. They have already destroyed 17 worlds in the past year. Earth lies directly in their path. Jake felt cold fear in his stomach. "How long do we have?" he asked. "Perhaps 2 years, maybe less," Lyra replied. "Alone, Earth cannot survive their attack. But together, as part of the Confederation, we can protect your world and your people." The president and his advisors looked at each other nervously. This was much more than they had expected. They had prepared for many possibilities, but not for a choice between joining an alien empire or being destroyed by machines. "We will need time to consider your offer," the president said. "Of course," Lyra replied. "But first I have something to show you. Jake, will you come aboard my ship?" Jake looked back at the government officials. The president nodded, and Jake walked with Lyra to her silver vessel. Inside, the ship was even more amazing than the outside. The walls seemed to be made of flowing light, and everything responded to Lyra's thoughts. "This is incredible," Jake said, looking around in wonder. "This is just a small transport ship," Lyra said with a smile. "Wait until you see my flagship." Lyra led Jake to a room with a large window that showed a view of space. In the distance, Jake could see her massive ship orbiting Earth. It was beautiful beyond description, with graceful curves and towers that seemed to defy physics. "Jake," Lyra said, turning to face him, "I want you to know what happened after I left Earth. My people were scattered across dozens of worlds, running and hiding from the empire that hunted us. But your kindness taught me something important. You showed me that power should be used to protect others, not to dominate them." Jake listened as Lyra told him how she had united the refugee fleets and led them in a rebellion against their oppressors. She had become empress not through conquest, but through the loyalty she inspired. Her empire was built on protection and cooperation, not fear. "You did all that?" Jake asked in amazement. "Your example guided me," Lyra replied. "Every decision I asked myself what Jake Morrison would do. You taught me that true strength comes from helping others, even when it costs you something." Jake felt overwhelmed. "I just helped someone who needed help. I never thought it would lead to anything like this." "That is exactly why it led to this," Lyra said. "You helped me because it was right, not because you expected a reward. That kind of goodness is rare in the galaxy." Lyra showed Jake more of her ship and explained how her technology worked. Everything was powered by crystals like the one she had given him. The crystals responded to emotional energy, especially positive emotions like love, hope, and compassion. "Your people have great potential," Lyra told Jake as they returned to the main room. "I have been watching Earth's progress for 10 years. Humans are innovative, brave, and surprisingly compassionate. Those are exactly the qualities the galaxy needs right now." When they returned to the landing site, Jake felt like his head was spinning with everything he had learned. The president and his team were waiting with dozens of questions. Lyra answered them all patiently, explaining the benefits of joining the Confederation and the dangers of the Void Collective. As the meeting ended, Lyra pulled Jake aside for a private moment. "There is something else I must tell you," she said. "I have created a new position in my empire. It is called Guardian of First Contact, and it would make you my personal representative for all new worlds that join the Confederation." Jake stared at her in shock. "You want me to leave Earth?" "Not leave," Lyra said. "You would divide your time between worlds, helping other species understand what it means to be part of something larger. You showed me kindness when I was alone and afraid. Now I want you to help me show that same kindness to others." Jake thought about Lisa, his job, and his life on Earth. Everything was changing so fast that he could barely keep up. But he also thought about the Void Collective and the threat they posed to his world. "I need time to think," Jake said. "Of course," Lyra replied. "But think quickly. Time is running short, and there is much work to be done." The next few weeks were the most chaotic in human history. World leaders met in emergency sessions arguing about Lyra's offer. Some countries wanted to join the Zephyrian Confederation immediately. Others insisted that humanity should remain, independent, and find its own way to fight the Void Collective. Jake found himself at the center of everything. Government officials brought him to meetings with presidents, prime ministers, and military leaders from around the world. Everyone wanted to know more about Lyra and what she was really like. "She's not lying," Jake told them over and over. "When I knew her before, she was always honest. If she says the Void Collective is coming, then they're coming." General Karen White, the head of Earth's Space Defense Force, was one of the people who opposed joining the Confederation. She was a tough woman with gray hair and sharp eyes who did not trust anyone. "How do we know this isn't a trick?" she asked during one meeting. "Maybe this Empress is the real threat. Maybe she wants us to join her empire so she can control us." Jake shook his head. "You don't understand. Lyra's not like that. She could have conquered Earth easily if she wanted to. Her ships are more advanced than anything we have." On the other side was Dr. Alex Chen, a brilliant scientist who worked for the United Nations. He believed that joining the Confederation was humanity's only chance for survival. "Look at the technology they're offering us," Dr. Chen said, showing holographic displays of Zephyrian devices. Clean energy, faster than light travel, medical advances that could cure every disease. We would be fools to refuse this opportunity. While the world's leaders argued, Jake struggled with his own decision. Lyra had offered him the position of Guardian of First Contact, but accepting it would mean leaving his old life behind. He would have to travel between worlds and help other species adapt to galactic civilization. Lisa was supportive, but Jake could see the sadness in her eyes when they talked about it. They were supposed to get married in 2 weeks, and now everything was uncertain. "I don't want to lose you," Lisa said one evening as they sat in their apartment. "But I also understand that this is bigger than just us. If you can help save our world, maybe you should do it." "But what about our life together?" Jake asked. "What about our wedding, our plans, our future?" Lisa took his hands and looked into his eyes. "Jake, 10 years ago you saved an alien girl because it was the right thing to do. You didn't know she would become an empress, you just helped someone who needed help. Now she's offering you a chance to help save not just Earth, but other worlds too. How can you say no to that?" Jake realized that Lisa understood him better than he understood himself. She could see that this was not really a choice for him. He had to help, because that was who he was. Meanwhile, Lyra's ships remained in orbit, around Earth, waiting patiently for humanity's decision. She gave Jake a communicator device that allowed him to visit her flagship whenever he wanted. The ship was even more amazing than her transport vessel. The flagship was like a floating city. It had gardens with plants from hundreds of different worlds, laboratories where scientists worked on advanced technologies, and meeting halls where representatives from dozens of species gathered to discuss important matters. Lyra showed Jake around personally, introducing him to beings that looked like walking trees, creatures that seemed to be made of living crystal, and others that defied description. All of them treated Lyra with great respect, but also with genuine affection. "They follow you because they love you, not because they fear you," Jake observed. "That is the only way to truly lead," Lyra replied. "Fear creates loyalty that lasts only as long as the fear. Love creates loyalty that lasts forever." Jake met Lyra's top advisors and military commanders. They were all different species, but they worked together like a family. Jake was impressed by how they treated each other with respect and kindness, even when they disagreed about important decisions. "Your empire is not like any empire in human history," Jake told Lyra. "Because it is not really an empire," she replied. "It is a family. Each world that joins us keeps its own culture and government. We only ask that they help protect other members and share their knowledge for the common good." During Jake's third visit to the flagship, alarms suddenly began sounding throughout the ship. Lyra's expression became serious and she led Jake quickly to the bridge. On the main screen, Jake could see several small, dark objects approaching the edge of Earth's solar system. "Void Collective scout ships," announced Commander Vex, Lyra's military leader. He was a tall being with blue-gray skin and 4 arms. 6 vessels moving fast toward the inner system. Lyra turned to Jake with worried eyes. They are here sooner than we expected. This is what your people need to see. The battle that followed was unlike anything in human history. Lyra's ships moved with incredible speed and grace, their weapons firing beams of pure energy. The Void Collective ships were dark and ugly, shaped like metal spiders with long, sharp legs. Jake watched from the bridge as the two forces clashed in space near Jupiter. The alien technology was far beyond anything humans had ever imagined. Ships moved faster than light, weapons that could destroy moons and shields that could deflect the power of stars. The Void Collective ships were tough and dangerous, but they were outnumbered. Lyra's fleet destroyed them one by one, but not before the scouts transmitted data about Earth back to their main force. Now they know about your world, Lyra told Jake after the battle was over. The main fleet will come within months, not years. When Jake returned to Earth, he found that the entire battle had been broadcast live on television. The whole world had seen the power of both the Zephyrian Empire and the Void Collective. The debate about joining the Confederation was over. 3 days later, the United Nations voted to accept Lyra's offer. Earth would become a member of the Zephyrian Confederation, but with special conditions. Humanity would keep its independence and continue developing its own technology. They would contribute to the common defense, but they would not be ruled by the Empire. Lyra accepted these conditions gladly. I do not want to rule your people, she told the assembled world leaders. I want to fight beside them. The day after the vote, Jake made his own decision. He accepted Lyra's offer to become Guardian of First Contact. Lisa surprised him by asking if she could come with him. Someone needs to teach these aliens about human culture, she said with a smile. And I think I would be good at that job. Lyra was delighted to have Lisa join them. She created a new position called Cultural Liaison and gave Lisa access to educational resources from hundreds of worlds. Jake and Lisa decided to get married on Lyra's flagship, with representatives from dozens of species as their guests. It was probably the strangest wedding in human history, but it was also the most beautiful. On their wedding day, as Jake and Lisa exchanged vows in a ceremony that combined human traditions with Zephyrian customs, Jake thought about how much his life had changed. 10 years ago, he was a simple mechanic who found a dying alien girl. Now he was a galactic ambassador married to the woman he loved, working alongside an empress who had become one of his closest friends. But the celebration was brief. Long-range sensors had detected the main Void Collective fleet moving toward Earth. The real battle was still to come, and Jake knew that everything he cared about would soon be at risk. As he looked out at the stars from Lyra's ship, holding Lisa's hand and wearing his crystal pendant, Jake prepared himself for the greatest challenge of his life. The fate of Earth and perhaps the entire galaxy might depend on the choices he made in the coming days. 6 months after Earth joined the Zephyrian Confederation, Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of Lyra's flagship watching his home planet slowly rotate below. Earth looked different now. New cities sparkled with Zephyrian crystal technology, and orbital defense stations surrounded the planet like protective jewels. Jake had changed too. He now wore the silver and blue uniform of a Guardian of First Contact, and the crystal pendant around his neck had grown brighter over the months. Lisa stood beside him, wearing the robes of a cultural liaison. She had become an expert on interspecies communication and was helping dozens of alien races understand human customs. The defense grid is complete, reported Commander Vex from his station. Earth is as protected as we can make it. Jake nodded, but he still felt nervous. The Void Collective's main fleet was only days away, and everyone knew this would be the biggest battle in galactic history. Over 200 Confederation ships had gathered to defend Earth, but intelligence reports said the enemy had twice as many vessels. Jake, Lyra said, walking up to him. She looked tired. The past months had been difficult for everyone. I need you to coordinate with the human fleet commanders. They understand their ships better than anyone else. Jake smiled. I still can't believe humans built a space fleet in 6 months. Your people are remarkable, Lyra replied. We gave you the basic technology, but you improved it in ways we never imagined. It was true. Human engineers had taken Zephyrian designs and made them faster, more efficient, and surprisingly deadly. The human ships were smaller than most Confederation vessels, but they were quick and unpredictable. Earth's fleet included 50 ships commanded by the best pilots humanity could find. Lisa had been working with the human crews to prepare them for fighting alongside alien allies. She had created communication protocols that allowed dozens of different species to coordinate during battle. Her work had impressed even Lyra's most experienced advisors. "Contact," announced the ship's sensor officer. "Multiple Void Collective, ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system." Everyone on the bridge turned to look at the main screen. Hundreds of dark spider-like ships appeared in space near Pluto. They were ugly and threatening, built only for destruction. Jake felt his heart racing as he counted them. 437 enemy vessels confirmed, Commander Vex reported. "They're moving toward Earth at maximum speed." Lyra's expression was calm, but Jake could see the worry in her purple eyes. "All ships assume battle positions. Jake, get to the communication center. We'll need perfect coordination. If we're going to win this." Jake ran through the corridors of the flagship to the communication center, where Lisa was already working with a team of technicians from 6 different species. They had set up a network that would allow every ship in the defense fleet to share information instantly. "Jake, thank goodness you're here," Lisa said. "The human commanders want to use a strategy the aliens have never seen before." Jake listened as Captain Ryan Brooks, the leader of Earth's space fleet, explained his plan through the communication system. Captain Brooks was a former Air Force pilot who had volunteered to command humanity's first starship. "The alien ships are big and powerful, but they're slow," Captain Brooks said. "Our ships are small, but we're fast and hard to hit. I want to use guerrilla tactics, hit-and-run attacks that confuse the enemy and disrupt their formations." Commander Vex was skeptical. "Human vessels cannot survive direct combat with Void Collective ships. Your weapons are too weak." "We don't plan to fight them directly," Captain Brooks replied. "We'll be mosquitoes buzzing around elephants. We'll distract them while your big ships do the real damage." Jake thought it was a crazy plan, but he had learned to trust human creativity. "Lyra, I think we should let them try it." The battle began when the Void Collective fleet reached Jupiter. Lyra's ships met them there, opening fire with weapons that could destroy mountains. The space around Jupiter lit up with explosions and energy beams, but the enemy had more ships and they were advancing steadily toward Earth. That's when Captain Brooks launched his surprise attack. 50 human ships came screaming out of nowhere, moving faster than anything the Void Collective had ever seen. They darted between the enemy vessels like angry wasps, firing quick bursts at engines and weapon systems before disappearing again. The Void Collective ships tried to swat the human vessels, but they were too slow. Every time they turned to attack, one human ship, 3 more would appear from different directions. The enemy formation began to break apart as ships turned to chase the fast-moving humans. "It's working!" Lisa shouted from her station. "The enemy fleet is losing formation!" Jake watched in amazement as the human ships led groups of Void Collective vessels away from the main battle. This gave Lyra's heavy ships the chance to attack smaller groups of enemies, instead of facing the entire fleet at once. But the battle was far from over. The Void Collective ships were learning to ignore the human vessels and focus on their real targets. Several Confederation ships were destroyed, and the enemy began advancing toward Earth again. That's when Jake had an idea. He remembered something. Lyra had told him about how crystal technology worked. The crystals responded to emotional energy, especially positive emotions like hope and love. "Lisa, can you patch me through to every human ship?" Jake asked. "Yes, but why?" Jake held up his crystal pendant. It was glowing brighter than ever before. "I think I know how to turn our ships into something special." Jake spoke to every human pilot in the fleet. He told them to think about what they were fighting for, their families, their friends, their home planet. He told them to focus on their love for humanity and their hope for the future. Something amazing happened. All across the human fleet, crystal power cores began glowing brighter. The ships became faster, their weapons became more powerful, and their shields became stronger. The emotional energy of the human crews was somehow boosting their technology. Impossible, Commander Vex muttered. Human emotion is affecting the crystal matrix. Nothing is impossible where humans are concerned, Lyra said with a smile. The battle turned. The supercharged human ships began inflicting real damage on Void Collective vessels. Working together with the Confederation fleet, they slowly pushed the enemy back. The final phase of the battle took place near Earth's moon. Jake coordinated the defense from Lyra's flagship, while Lisa managed communications between dozens of different species. The crystal pendant around Jake's neck was now blazing with light, somehow connecting him to every ship in the fleet. When the last Void Collective ship was destroyed, a cheer went up from every vessel in the defense fleet. They had won, but the cost had been high. 23 Confederation ships were lost and 8 human vessels were destroyed. Jake felt exhausted but relieved. Earth was safe and humanity had proven itself in the greatest battle in galactic history. 3 months after the battle, Jake stood in the same spot on Lyra's flagship, but everything looked different now. Earth had been officially named a guardian world by the Confederation, which meant it would help protect smaller civilizations that wanted to join the galactic community. Human technology was now being shared throughout the galaxy. The emotional resonance effect that Jake had discovered during the battle was being studied by scientists from hundreds of worlds. It seemed that humans had a unique ability to enhance crystal technology through their emotions. Jake and Lisa divided their time between Earth and space, helping new species understand what it meant to be part of something larger than themselves. They had been present at first contact ceremonies for 6 different worlds, and each time Jake remembered what it felt like to meet Lyra for the first time. "Do you ever miss your old life?" Lisa asked one evening, as they watched the sunset from their apartment in Denver. They were visiting Earth for a few weeks before their next assignment. Jake thought about it carefully. "Sometimes I miss the simplicity of it," he said, "but I wouldn't change anything. That night when I found Lyra in the mountains, I had no idea it would lead to all this." "You saved more than just one alien girl," Lisa said. "You saved entire worlds." Jake smiled and touched his crystal pendant. "I just helped someone who needed help. Everything else happened because of the choices other people made." "That's what makes you special," a familiar voice said behind them. Jake and Lisa turned to see Lyra standing in their living room. She often used her advanced technology to visit them without warning. "Your Majesty," Lisa said with a smile. "You need to start knocking," Lyra laughed. "I have exciting news. The Confederation Council has voted to establish a new academy on Earth. We want to train the next generation of guardians and cultural liaisons. Will you help us run it?" Jake looked at Lisa, and she nodded. "Of course," Jake said. "We'd be honored." "Good," Lyra said, "because I think Earth is going to become the most important world in the galaxy. Your people have something special, the ability to see potential in others and bring out the best in them." That night, as Jake and Lisa planned their new roles as teachers and leaders, Jake thought about how much his life had changed. He had started as a simple mechanic in a small town, but kindness and courage had led him to become a guardian of worlds. Looking up at the stars, Jake could see the lights of ships from Dew,